let's move on to our next topic here. Which top 5 running back, Dave, has the most upside? This could be an easy one. So
McCaffrey.
Everyone think that?
You know what? I'm gonna take a wild card here. I'm gonna go with Bijan Robinson. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Bijan Robinson. Might as well make the case for him right now, is why I think he could be the RB1 over some of these guys potentially. So Bijan Robinson's entering the NFL right now, is in my opinion the best running back prospect that I've ever watched on film, and that includes Saquon Barkley. The reason I think Bijan is a better prospect than Saquon Barkley is because I think Bijan Robinson is a better mental processor than Saquon Barkley was. I think he does a much better job in between the tackles. I think he does a much better job setting up his blocks. I think he does a much better job of creating yards independent of his offensive line. But in addition to that, he has a really good system that he's coming into. This Falcons team had the highest rushing grade of all NFL teams according to Pro Football Focus. They did it really without a big name offensive line. They have one amazing player in Chris Lindstrom. I think he's the best guard in the NFL right now in the run game. But outside of him, they just did it with scheme, and that scheme's coming back. In addition to that, we're talking about a prospect who had more forced missed tackles than PFF has ever charted last year with 102. He had a breakout. His breakout age was great. He was amazing as a freshman. 6.3 yards per carry throughout his career. 39% forced missed tackle rate. 22 carries of 15 plus yards. And he can work in the passing game. It's not just like he's a guy like some of these guys who make progress in the NFL as a receiver, like Barkley or Jonathan Taylor. To me, when I watch them play, I feel like they're just running flare routes or catching screens or running very basic routes. With Bijan Robinson, it's like a Christian McCaffrey type receiving running back. He's going to be flexed out. He's going to be used on arrow routes, Texas routes, wheel routes. He's going to be used all different ways on the vertical plane, horizontal, and it's going to be a mismatch. And if Arthur Smith, can figure this out, which I think he can, it's going to be big stuff. And also 1,071 yards after contact last year at a 1,575. I mean, this is just a dude who doesn't need anything around him. So I just feel like he's coming into a great system here. He's the best. I think he's the best talent in the NFL right now at running back, to be completely honest, including McCaffrey, including Barkley, including whoever, based on age, based on lack of tread on his tires, all of those things. So to me, I think there is a case for him to be the RB1 overall, because Barkley wasn't too far away in 2018. Was he RB1? He wasn't in 2018, right?
I think he was RB2.
He was 2, right. But Barkley was close.
They were basically tied in PPR.
Okay, in 2018? Okay, right. And so I think we've already seen a case where it's come close, and I think Bijan has a chance to do it.
All right, Tara, who has the most upside?
Yeah, it's got to be Bijan. Again, I know we've been burned in the past off of rookie running backs that we've taken in the first round and turning it into a nightmare. But what kind of pushes me over, Bijan, the prospect is just on another level. But what pushes me over the edge is just the landing spot for the Falcons being the little perfect situation for him. With Atlanta, we know, rushing attempts first, rushing yards. We talked about them being, fantastic as a rushing offense, high grades, the touchdowns were there, the yards per attempt were there. There was no flaw in their run game with literally, anyone and everyone that they inserted into the lineup to run. And I know the argument that a lot of people have is kind of the worry that they're going to, and I think I mentioned this earlier, the worry they're going to increase pass volume. We're going to see Kyle Pitts and Drake London together again, Desmond Ridder with more experience under him. We did see a little uptick as well in pass volume. But I think kind of what we have to consider with that is that, there's probably going to be an increase in game pace. They ran the 7th least plays in 2022. They're going to increase pass volume, increase the pace of game, and the run game doesn't have to be reduced. So if we're looking at that Atlanta Falcons system, knowing exactly what Arthur Smith wants to do, knowing that this is going to stick, and knowing that Bijan is coming in there as this massive investment. This is not going to be a 50-50 split with Tyler Algier, although I still love him as a high-end handcuff. But Bijan fell literally into the perfect situation. Combine that with the talent, the upside is massive. So I'm willing to risk a high pick on him just because the likelihood is a lot higher than a lot of these rookies that we've seen in the past.
All right. I was surprised. 2 Bijans there and a McCaffrey for who has the most upside and among the top 5. Which top 5 running back has the most downside, Dave?
The running back with the most downside, based on who we're talking, it's got to be Jonathan Taylor.
You're not going to get an argument from Dan. Why do you say that, Dave?
Well, you're asking me or you're asking Dan?
You, Dave.
We know that the offense is in the first year of a new playbook, first year rookie quarterback. don't know how that's going to work out. We don't know what the offensive line is going to look like. Taylor's coming off of a terrible year where he wasn't his efficient self. The argument for Jonathan Taylor has always been the dude has 2,000 total yard potential. He's got to run like a world beater again, and he's got to do it with a rookie quarterback in an offense that's probably going to have some mistakes in it, and an offensive line that's not as good as it was when he did run for over 2,000 total yards, or did have 2,000 total yards 2 seasons ago. Worried about touchdowns getting eaten up by Anthony Richardson. Worried about the offense playing from behind a little bit more often than we'd like. And I get nervous about Jonathan Taylor being a mega stud.
Okay. Dan, I think you're going to agree. He has the most downside, but he's not in your top 5. So of your top 5 running backs, which includes Josh Jacobs and the other 4, who has the most downside?
It would have to be Josh Jacobs for me. I mean, he's 5th in my rankings for a reason. There are good things about Josh Jacobs. I like that he's just 25 years old. The rest of these guys are kind of bordering on the fall off age of 27-ish. I like that he had 23.1 touches per game last year, which is, to me, it's all about volume. I like no more Darren Waller. Maybe that helps him in the pass game, but I still think back to this and I'm like, I know Derek Carr's not great, but in my mind, Jimmy Garoppolo is a terrible NFL quarterback. I'm sticking with that take for the rest of my life. I feel like the Brock Purdy era proved it to me more than ever so, that literally it's all system-based there in San Francisco. And so I think Jimmy out of that system, yes, he gets Josh McDaniels, which helps because that system he's shown some success in, I guess, a 4-game stretch, if you want to call it that, with a really good offense around him. But I have real big concerns about the offense with Jimmy Garoppolo. So that, to me, scares me a bit with Jacobs, who had 12 touchdowns last year. Could we see that number fall back to 7-8 range? Possibly. So he would be my biggest concern.
All right, how about you, Tara? Who has the most downside in the top 5?
It's JT. Technically, there is the risk that Saquon could sit a little bit, so that is a massive downside. So maybe there's the argument there, but then again, that's not statistic-wise. That's purely if he decides he wants to make a statement and wants to, sit out a portion of the season or a few games at least. But it's JT for sure. And again, I agree with Dave. It's for him to hit RB1 overall again. Way too many things have to line up in a situation that is strictly brand new. There's a lot of things that can work out for him. We see, if things maybe can work out with Anthony Richardson, maybe he can, find his accuracy, open things up a little bit, threat to run as well. Maybe that opens things up and the offense moves a little bit better than we expect. And those rushing touchdowns can be there. But if they're not, he is so reliant on those. And if Anthony Richardson steals them, you get a little bit concerned that he's just the riskiest one. When you look at a guy like Saquon, I think Adam, as you talked about, he's the one that we just can't really see as the overall RB1 just because of the situation that he's in. But at least he's a very stable, low risk option if he actually gets out there and plays. We know he's an RB1 just based off, who he is, statistics, and track record. With JT, it's a little bit concerning because there's so many things that could go wrong for him.
Yeah. I hope I'm not selling Barkley short by saying he doesn't have number 1 running back potential. I don't see him having like 300 plus carries. I don't see him having more than maybe 55, 60 catches. He's not going to have a Josh Jacobs like workload or a Derrick Henry like workload. I don't know.
No, you're not selling him short, Adam. To even get to that level, he'd have to get close back to 2018, where he had 9 runs of 40 plus yards. He had 2 runs of 40 plus yards last year. Right. 2 runs. He's had multiple lower body injuries. He had 2 runs of 40 plus yards. He averaged 3.37 yards after contact per attempt in 2018, and 2019 was not too far off. Last year was 2.73, and that was supposed to be back to Saquon Barkley. So in my mind, he really isn't the same back. It's not his fault. I don't really think many backs carry that well through multiple lower body injuries, including tears, and then into their late 20s. But I just don't think he's that explosive runner, as explosive as a runner as he was, I guess. And that's what you need to be to be a fantasy RB1 overall.
His schedule's a nightmare too.
And that's another thing. You look at Dave's PSOS, like his strength of schedule rankings, 32 for Barkley.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dead last. You have to respect the Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders.
Who's going to run against those defensive lines?
Right. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard for him. Now, he had some decent games against them last year, but
Cowboys.
He's got the NFC West on top of that. He's got the AFC East on top of that. Those are going to be some tough defenses. Mm-hmm. Plus the Saints, plus Green Bay.
Yep.
It is an ugly schedule for all Giants. You've got to keep that in mind when you draft any Giant this year.
Yep.
And then add on top of that, people kind of laugh about it and make jokes, but Daniel Jones, again, he's the one on the list where you're looking at it other than Anthony Richardson, has the most upside in terms of rushing production. I don't see where that really decreases for him. So, Saquon does unfortunately have that to compete with as well.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said I can't see him getting 300 carries. He had 295 carries in 16 games last year. So he did have a pretty big workload. I don't really think of him holding. I don't know. Right. Yeah, it was. I don't know. How many did Josh Jacobs have last year?
I think that number goes down if they re-sign him, though, to a multi-year deal.
Well, it's not a huge knock against him. It's just I don't think he's going to be basically like Derrick Henry. The case for him is volume. He's going to get every goal line touchdown, basically. It's not going to be quite the same. Yeah, Josh Jacobs had 340 carries. Derrick Henry had 349 in one fewer game. He's not going to be there, Saquon Barkley, but he could certainly be top 5 in carries.